Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things way down. Dim the lights, put your phone face down, let your brain gently power off like a medieval candle running out of wax. Because tonight we begin the long, slightly tragic, mildly sarcastic story of Queen Elizabeth I, a woman who lived her entire life surrounded by danger, betrayal, and men who absolutely could not handle her existing. And somehow, she made it to the throne anyway, which, honestly, is kind of rude of her. So let's drift back to 16th century England, a damp place, a loud place, a place where everyone is either scheming, praying, or dying of something preventable. Elizabeth is born in September of 1533. She is not born to cheers. She is born to disappointment. Her father is Henry VIII, a man who collected wives the way other men collected bad decisions. He wanted a son. He needed a son. He had detonated an entire religion because he wanted a son. And instead he got Elizabeth, just a girl, again. Henry tried very hard to pretend this was fine. It was not fine. The court was awkward, the celebrations were muted, everyone smiled politely while quietly panicking about what would happen next. Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, was supposed to fix everything. She was supposed to deliver the long-awaited male heir and justify Henry's increasingly unhinged life choices. Instead, she delivered a daughter, and a growing sense that this whole marriage experiment might have been a mistake. Anne tried to spin it. She insisted the next child would be a boy. She smiled, she hosted, she played the part. Henry, meanwhile, started squinting at her the way a man squints at a receipt he doesn't remember signing. Elizabeth's early childhood is brief and confusing. She is treated like royalty for about 5 minutes, then the vibes change. When Elizabeth is just 2 years old, Anne Boleyn is arrested. The charges are creative: adultery, incest, treason, basically every crime Henry could think of that came with a convenient death sentence. Anne is executed, cleanly, efficiently, and very publicly. Elizabeth does not witness this, obviously, but she grows up with the knowledge floating around her life like fog. Your mother was a traitor. Your mother was unfaithful. Your mother was dangerous. And just like that, Elizabeth is declared illegitimate. Her title is stripped. Her household is reduced. She is no longer a princess. She is something else. A problem, maybe. Henry moves on immediately, because of course he does. Elizabeth grows up bouncing between households, watched carefully, taught to behave, and reminded constantly to stay quiet. She learns early that survival depends on being observant and agreeable. She listens more than she speaks. Which is funny, because she will later become extremely good at speaking. Despite everything, Elizabeth receives an exceptional education. Humanist tutors, languages, Latin, Greek, French, Italian. She reads theology for fun. She writes elegantly. She memorizes scripture. This is partly because Henry wants all his children to look impressive on paper, and partly because no one knows what else to do with her. Elizabeth is clever, painfully clever, the kind of clever that makes adults uncomfortable. She learns early how to say the correct thing without saying too much, a skill that will save her life more than once. Henry eventually dies, bloated, exhausted, and deeply convinced he was right about everything. His long-awaited son, Edward, takes the throne. Elizabeth is now a teenager. She is Protestant. She is politically aware, and she is still very much expendable. Edward reigns briefly. He is sickly. Everyone knows it. Everyone pretends otherwise. When Edward dies, the throne passes to Elizabeth's older half-sister, Mary I. And this is where things get tense. Mary is Catholic, deeply Catholic, furiously Catholic. She has spent her entire life feeling robbed, humiliated, and angry. Elizabeth is Protestant, carefully Protestant, quietly Protestant, and very aware that Mary has excellent reasons to see her as a threat. Elizabeth does what she always does. She adapts. She attends Mass. She keeps her opinions vague. She smiles. She agrees. Mary does not trust her anyway, because Elizabeth is young. She is popular. She is the daughter of Anne Boleyn, and she exists, which is enough. When rebellions break out against Mary's rule, Elizabeth is implicated, not because she actually did anything, but because it would be convenient if she had. Elizabeth is arrested. She is taken to the Tower of London. This is not a fun place to be. It is especially not a fun place to be when your mother was executed there. Elizabeth knows this. Everyone knows this. She writes letters, careful letters, respectful letters, letters that say nothing while sounding like they say everything. She denies involvement. She claims innocence. She survives. Barely. Eventually, she is released, not because Mary trusts her, but because killing her would cause problems. Elizabeth lives under surveillance, every movement watched, every word noted. She learns patience. She learns restraint. She learns that sometimes the smartest move is to wait while other people destroy themselves. And Mary does destroy herself, slowly, through paranoia, through illness, through a reign defined by fear and burning resentment. When Mary dies in 1558, England exhales. Elizabeth becomes queen. She is 25 years old. She is unmarried, she is politically scarred, and she knows exactly how fragile her position is. She has spent her entire life surviving the consequences of other people's decisions. She has learned how quickly favor can turn into condemnation. She has learned that being underestimated is useful. And now, finally, she has the crown. Not because anyone planned it this way, but because she outlasted everyone else. And that, honestly, is kind of Elizabethan of all. So let's ease into the next stretch of her life. The reign, the pressure, the marriage questions that never stop, the image she builds on purpose. But for now, just let that settle. A girl nobody wanted, a woman nobody trusted, a queen who learned very early on how to survive quietly. All right, let's ease back in. You're still here. Elizabeth is still alive, which, given her track record so far, already feels like an achievement. So when Queen Elizabeth I takes the throne in 1558, England doesn't exactly throw itself into a carefree nap. People are relieved, yes, but they're also nervous, because this is a woman, a young one, an unmarried one, and that alone makes everyone deeply uncomfortable. Elizabeth knows this. She knows it in her bones. She's watched her sister rule through fear. She's watched her father rule through intimidation and tantrums. So she chooses something else. She chooses performance. From the beginning, Elizabeth understands that ruling is theater, and she is very good at theater. She rides through London smiling. She listens carefully. She speaks warmly. She thanks people for their loyalty as if it was inevitable all along. She presents herself as approachable, but not familiar. She creates distance without coldness, which is harder than it sounds. Elizabeth immediately inherits a religious mess. England has been yanked back and forth between Catholicism and Protestantism like a spiritual tug-of-war rope. People are tired. Clergy are confused. Everyone just wants to know what version of Christianity they're supposed to be pretending to believe this week. Elizabeth, wisely, does not go nuclear. She reestablishes the Church of England, but she keeps it flexible, vague, comfortably ambiguous. She does not ask people to peer too deeply into their own souls. She mostly asks them to not cause problems. This is Elizabeth's secret talent. She understands that people want stability more than purity. Her motto, though she never officially says it out loud, is basically, believe what you want, just don't make it my problem. And it works. Now, the marriage question. Oh, the marriage question. From day one, Elizabeth is asked when she will marry, who she will marry, why she hasn't married yet, whether she understands how babies work. Her advisors are relentless. Foreign ambassadors treat her womb like a diplomatic bargaining chip. Every eligible prince in Europe is floated past her like a catalog. Spanish princes, French dukes, Holy Roman this, Archduke that. Elizabeth listens, she considers, she flirts, she delays. Because Elizabeth has watched what marriage does to queens. She watched her mother die for it. She watched her sister lose authority to her husband. Marriage for a queen is not romance. It's surrender. And Elizabeth has no intention of surrendering anything. So instead, she does something clever. She weaponizes indecision. She allows negotiations to drag on for years. She encourages hope without commitment. She lets foreign powers believe they still have a chance. This keeps England safe, because no one wants to anger the woman who might still marry their cousin. And Elizabeth, she stays in control. Of course, there's one man who gets closer than anyone else. Robert Dudley. Handsome, charming, dangerously charismatic. Elizabeth likes him. A lot. She laughs with him, she trusts him, she spends time with him in ways that make courtiers extremely uncomfortable. Naturally, rumors explode. When Dudley's wife conveniently dies under suspicious circumstances, the court collectively freezes. Everyone looks at Elizabeth. Elizabeth looks back and very carefully does nothing. Because marrying Dudley would be political suicide, and Elizabeth knows it. So Dudley remains something. Not a husband, not quite a scandal, a lingering what if that never resolves. And this, too, becomes part of the performance. Elizabeth begins crafting her image, not as a wife, not as a mother, but as something else entirely. She is married to England. She calls herself the Virgin Queen, not necessarily because it's true, but because it's useful. Virginity becomes symbolism. Purity becomes power. Her body becomes untouchable territory. And people buy it. They paint her glowing, ageless, almost unreal. Elizabeth leans into it. She dresses extravagantly, pearls everywhere, white gowns, faces powdered pale enough to look almost sculpted. She becomes less human over time, more icon. This is intentional, because icons don't get overthrown as easily as women. Meanwhile, Elizabeth governs, quietly, methodically. She surrounds herself with capable advisors, men who are smarter than average and loyal enough to know when to stop talking. She listens to counsel, then she decides. She is cautious with money. She avoids unnecessary wars. She prefers strategy over spectacle, which makes her frustrating to enemies because Elizabeth does not rush. She waits. She lets threats exhaust themselves. But the threats are there, always there. Catholic Europe watches her carefully. The Pope does not approve of her existence. Plots bubble constantly beneath the surface. And then there's the other queen, Mary, Queen of Scots. Beautiful, Catholic, and very, very inconvenient. She has a strong claim to the English throne. She also has terrible judgment. Elizabeth keeps her at arm's length, then at closer watch, then under house arrest. Because killing Mary outright would make her a martyr, and Elizabeth hates martyrs. So she waits. Years pass. Decades. Elizabeth ages. Her image does not. She refuses to be seen as old. She refuses to be seen as weak. She covers her thinning hair with wigs. She hides scars. She controls every portrait. Time moves. Elizabeth pretends it doesn't. And somehow, England prospers. Trade expands, culture flourishes, the country finds its footing. Elizabeth becomes beloved, not because she is warm, but because she is consistent. People know what to expect from her, which after decades of chaos feels like peace. So let's drift onward, toward the later years, toward war, toward betrayal, toward the weight of ruling alone for too long. No rush. Elizabeth will still be there when we arrive. All right, let's settle in for the last stretch. The lights are low. Elizabeth is older now. and the crown is heavier than it used to be. By the time Queen Elizabeth I reaches her 40s, she has been ruling longer than most people expected her to survive at all. The novelty has worn off, the patience has thinned, and the enemies have grown louder. Because Elizabeth's greatest strength, her refusal to fully commit, has also created a backlog of unresolved problems. And eventually, history comes to collect. Let's start with the Catholic problem, because it never really went away. It just waited. The Pope formally excommunicates Elizabeth, which is essentially a polite religious way of saying anyone is now allowed to kill you. Catholic plots multiply, foreign powers whisper, letters are passed in code, priests sneak into England like badly disguised spies, and at the center of all this mess sits Mary, Queen of Scots. She has been Elizabeth's problem for decades now, locked away, shuffled between castles, traded politely while being watched constantly. Mary writes letters. So many letters. Letters plotting, letters complaining, letters insisting she deserves better. Eventually, one of those letters goes too far. A plot is uncovered. A real one. Not a vague rumor, not a convenient excuse. This time, there is evidence. Elizabeth hesitates. Of course she does. She knows what executing a fellow queen means. She knows the precedent it sets. She knows how it will look. She also knows she's running out of options. After years of delay, Elizabeth signs the death warrant, then immediately claims she didn't mean for it to be carried out so quickly, which is very on brand. Mary, Queen of Scots, is executed in 1587. Elizabeth mourns publicly. Privately, she sleeps a little easier. But Europe does not forget, especially not Philip II of Spain. Philip has been tolerating Elizabeth for years. Her Protestantism, her support of privateers, her encouragement of men who keep stealing Spanish treasure and calling it exploration. After Mary's execution, he's done tolerating, so he sends the Armada. The Armada is supposed to be overwhelming, unstoppable, divinely sanctioned. Elizabeth responds with words, carefully chosen words. She gives a speech to her troops. She reminds them that she may have the body of a weak woman, but she has the heart and stomach of a king. And yes, she absolutely knows how dramatic that sounds. The Armada fails, not just because of English defenses, but because of weather, timing, bad luck. Elizabeth frames it as divine favor because why not? England celebrates. Elizabeth's image reaches its peak. She is no longer just a queen. She is legend. But legends don't age well. The final years of Elizabeth's reign are quieter and heavier. The people she trusted most begin to die. William Cecil, Robert Dudley, advisors, friends. One by one, they leave her behind. Elizabeth grows irritable, suspicious, melancholy. She hates reminders of time. She avoids mirrors. She refuses to name a successor, because naming one would mean admitting the end is coming. Her court grows restless. Her patience grows thin. She punishes more harshly. She forgives less easily. The glitter fades. By the early 1600s, Elizabeth is tired. She sleeps poorly. She eats little. She stands for hours because lying down feels too much like giving in. When death finally comes in 1003, it is quiet. No drama. No spectacle. Just a woman who has held herself together for nearly 70 years, finally letting go. She leaves no children, no husband, no direct heir. The crown passes to James of Scotland. The Tudor line ends. Elizabeth's legacy, however, does not. She is remembered as Gloriana, as the Virgin Queen, as a golden age. But beneath the paint and pearls, she was something simpler. A survivor. A woman who learned early that power was never given freely,
that safety was temporary, and that sometimes the smartest way to rule was to wait and let everyone else make mistakes first. And with that, we can let her rest. Thanks for staying with me. Get some sleep.